Kate Middleton is asking for privacy in the wake of her cancer announcement last week. The Princess of Wales revealed her diagnosis on Friday, but didn't specify what type of cancer she's being treated for. She said she's going through preventative chemotherapy for her condition. CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tayyib is in London following all of these developments. Imtiaz, what else do we know about the diagnosis, the treatment, and all of the backlash against all of the conspiracies that resulted from her absence from the public eye last week?
Lilia, Tony, good to be with you. Well, as we know, Princess Catherine, who of course is commonly known as Kate here in the UK, is undergoing what she described as, quote, preventative chemotherapy. Now, preventative chemotherapy isn't an official term for a type of treatment here in the UK, and as we know, no further information has been given on the type of cancer that Kate has or the type of treatment that she's having. There are, however, current treatments that exist called, quote, chemoprevention, which lower the risk of getting cancer or of it returning in healthy people. But that level of specificity is not something that the palace has provided, and it comes at a time when Kensington Palace is being deeply criticized for its lack of transparency and clarity leading up to this extraordinary statement from the princess where she revealed that she's dealing with cancer. Guys.
You know, Imtiaz, there's going to be a return, apparently, to public duty sometime after Easter. Could you just remind me or underscore for me how this is going, this promise ties into the timing there? Is that still the plan for a post-Easter return?
Yeah, Tony, lots of questions about that, but most royal observers believe that Kate will not return to work during Easter or soon after Easter, as was previously announced by the palace. You, of course, may recall that in a statement, Kate said that her family now needs, and I'm quoting here, time, space, and privacy while she completes her treatment. And while it is traditional for the royal family to attend an Easter service, with them attending one at Windsor just last year, William and the kids are not expected to head to St. George's Chapel on the grounds of Berkshire Castle for Easter Day, although there are reports King Charles, who is also undergoing treatment for cancer, is planning to lead the royal family on Easter Sunday at their annual church service in what's being described as a public show of unity, while Princess Kate will be recuperating in Berkshire with her family. Guys.
Imtiaz, as it always happens with palace news, the palace is being criticized and also praised for transparency, lack thereof, over the health and overall, messaging around both Kate and King Charles. How are people responding in the UK?
Yeah, well, let's start with the praise. Of course, many people here in Britain and beyond have a huge amount of sympathy for Princess Catherine, a mother of 3 who's in the prime of her life and is now dealing with cancer. Kate, as we know, is frequently polled as one of the most popular senior members of the royal family. And as we've been saying, well, King Charles was open with his cancer diagnosis, although he hasn't said exactly what kind he has from the beginning. The revelation from the princess, after weeks of often wild speculation about the nature of her planned abdominal surgery and subsequent months-long absence from the public eye, has again put this scrutiny on Kensington Palace over its handling of this situation and specifically the media. And while most agree that everyone, including members of the royal family, are entitled to privacy, Catherine is still the future Queen of England. And given the speculation and frankly criticism that's been building for weeks ahead of that extraordinary video statement, royal observers are saying that palace staff should have known better and handled things much differently. Tony, Lilia.
Imtiaz, great to have you. Thanks.
I want to bring in Victoria Ward. She is the Deputy Royal Editor at the Daily Telegraph. Thanks so much for joining us, Victoria. Let's start here with the timing. Why go public with this now?
I think the princess has been very clear about why she decided to do this now. It's all about the children. She made it very clear when she gave her statement last week, and Kensington Palace has reiterated since that all she cared about was protecting the children. So she waited until their children broke up from school on Friday for the Easter holidays, and then they put out that statement to coincide with the time that they could then take those children away for a 2.5-week Easter break and protect them, keep them in a family bubble, protect them from the coverage that was going to follow. The other point to make is that Kensington Palace has always said from the very beginning when she was in hospital in January that she was going to return to duties after Easter. they realised that there was increasing speculation and hysteria and buzz around that build up to the Easter weekend. Everyone was expecting to see her. So they knew that they had to say something that obviously wasn't going to happen. They needed to say something to ensure that the public understood that she wasn't going to be seen for some time.
So Princess Kate now becoming the second royal currently being treated for cancer. What kind of reaction have we seen and heard in the UK?
The reaction's been really positive, actually, overwhelmingly positive, from the King and Prince William, who've spoken of their pride in Catherine, to cancer charities, to cancer patients, to the wider public. There's been huge sympathy, huge warmth, huge affection for her, and I think it's shown the level of affection that the UK has for the monarchy as a whole. And I think Kate will have been buoyed by that. She decided to speak in the first place because partly because she saw the level of affection that was shown to Charles when he revealed his own cancer diagnosis in February. She has been encouraged and reassured by the King, with whom she enjoys a really close relationship. She recorded that video message on Wednesday, and then the King invited her for lunch at Windsor Castle on Thursday. I think they had quite an emotional private time together where he reassured her that it was the right thing to do and that the public would be backing her. And I think that's come to pass. I think that the palace has been incredibly encouraged and impressed by the level of support that she's received.
Okay, Victoria Ward, thank you.
The shock announcement has prompted apologies from some celebrities, including Blake Lively, who either speculated about Kate's health or mocked this manipulated photo released by the palace on Mother's Day. Others are under pressure to follow suit.
Are the last few weeks a wake-up call for public decency and compassion?
I think that many people, now that they know, will be thinking again about some of the things that they said, some of the jokes that they made.
Julian Payne is a former spokesman for King Charles. The King is also battling cancer and in a statement praised Kate for her courage.
Seeing her sat on the bench in her jeans and jumper, it felt very relatable. She is both a sort of mystical figure as a princess, but actually she's also a mum, sat on a park bench in a stripy jumper.
Kate is one of the most famous women in the world, but also a 42-year-old woman with a cancer diagnosis and 3 young children she wants to protect.
And Holly is joining us now with more. Holly, so it's interesting that we say that there's a reckoning with how the press covers the royal family, but Blake Lively doesn't represent the press. For the most part, the coverage of Princess Kate was respectful over the course of 2 months. People wanted to know where she was and why the palace wasn't being forthcoming, because this is a tax-funded institution. They are paid millions of dollars to represent the United Kingdom. They, in turn, bring in millions of dollars in tourism for being the face of the monarchy. I sort of wonder if you've had information from your sources about why the palace just wasn't upfront about what she was going through. And I say this as a cynical journalist, not as a bleeding heart human being that feels sorry for a mother of 3 and her husband and the family and what they're going through.
You know, it's an interesting question. I certainly think that the palace looks as though it was back-footed in terms of how it dealt with this. It looked old-fashioned. It looked slow to react. You know, have they learned lessons about this? I think, you know, they definitely have. But of course, does that justify the kind of behaviour that we saw online, the kind of rumour mongering, even the sort of peddling of conspiracy theories, including from celebrities? I think that many people in this country would say absolutely not. And I've said this before on television, including to you, I think, Vlad, that I think the sort of one of the things that was lost in this story up until the announcement that Kate has cancer is that, you know, yes, she's an incredibly famous person. Yes, she's a celebrity in her own right. You know, she's just immensely famous, and you're correct that the British taxpayer does contribute money towards the royals' activities, a role, by the way, that is generally viewed in this country as a kind of sort of public service activity. But I think what's kind of been lost here is that she's also just a human being, and as we now know, she's a young mother with a cancer diagnosis.
I also want to ask Holly about how much information has been released. I think, you know, a lot of folks can understand this is a very private medical matter. But again, this isn't just someone who's a celebrity, they are a royal. How much privacy do you think the royals can really fairly expect?
Well, surely everyone should be able to expect some level of privacy, right? I mean, especially when it comes to something as intensely personal as your health, and especially health concerns. And the other thing to remember, I think, about the royals is that they're not Hollywood celebrities, you know. They are not promoting their own brands. They're not there to burnish their own images. They're there to kind of promote and protect the institution, the monarchy. And as I just said, it's in this country, it's really viewed as a public service role. Now, do they care about their own images? Well, you know, of course they do. But it's not their purpose. They're not entertainers. They're not politicians. And despite the fact that British taxpayers do contribute towards their activities, the royals certainly don't sign any kind of a waiver saying that, you know, everything in their private life, everything in their personal life should be up for grabs.
Yeah, some good points there, Holly. Thank you.
Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. John LaPook is joining us now. Dr. LaPook, in Princess Kate's own words, she says she's in the early stages of receiving preventative chemotherapy. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think I've been speaking to people over the weekend, and that word preventative was confusing. You know, the medical term we usually use is adjuvant chemotherapy. So what you're preventing is if there happen to be microscopic little cancer cells there that you can't see, and we don't know if there are or there aren't, you're giving chemotherapy with the thought of killing them now when they're most vulnerable, rather than giving it time to grow up and multiply and spread and form metastases.
And doctors said they found this cancer after this abdominal surgery. Is it likely to find sort of, you know, cancer or signs of it after a surgery?
You know, it can happen when you, say, take out a surgical specimen and then it looks okay, and then you slice it up and you look in the pathology department and you say, oh, there are a few cancer cells there. These days, with all the scans that we do, often you do a CAT scan beforehand, for example. You see a mass there. And then during the operation, you're actually looking in the abdomen. You say, oh, look, I'm surprised. I didn't realize, but, you know, there's cancer there. But that didn't happen here. So this happened after the fact. And to me, that was sort of something that said, well, maybe, you know, we don't know the details here. Maybe that suggests that it was found in a relatively early stage because they only found out about it afterwards.
Dr. LaPook, the medical side of this is clear, or as clear as it can be. The psychological side of this is something you know a lot about. You've dealt with patients in general who have cancer diagnoses. They've got to fight it medically. What happens psychologically when you get news like this?
Yeah, I'm really happy for this question. And we're not talking about Kate Middleton right now. Let's talk about just my patient who happens to be diagnosed with whatever. It could be cancer, it could have a bypass surgery or whatever. They have the medical healing that happens at the beginning. And, you know, that happens over a period of weeks or perhaps a little bit longer. And that goes over. But then weeks or even months later, especially if it's something that was really sort of surprising. They were in this fight-flight mode at the beginning. The adrenaline's going, the cortisol's going, and that dies down, and then they go back to their normal life. They could bolt up in bed, and I've had patients do this, 2 in the morning, and think in a cold sweat and think, wow, that was a bullet that just went by my head. And it can be destabilizing. Yeah. They can have anxiety and depression. And what I've learned to do, it has a beginning, middle, and an end. And I've immunized my patients. I say, look, this could happen. I warn them about it. And they've come back to me and said, thank you so much. It did happen. And then we talk about it. Sometimes I'll give them a little something to, you know, relax them for just a short period of time. But that immunizing people and warning them this could happen has been really important in my own practice.
That's why you're such a great doctor. You're not just a practitioner, but you're a person throughout, and you help everyone come back to the humanity that's at the center of this. So thank you very much, Dr. LaPook.
We're joined now by CBS News royal contributor Tina Brown. Good morning, Tina. I think a lot of people were just kind of taken aback by the imagery. What was your reaction to that announcement?
I found it absolutely heartbreaking. I mean, here was this brave, composed, you know, marvelously dignified young woman, you know, talking about something that was deeply shocking and traumatic for her and her family.
Right.
And she's been so, you know, ridiculously overwhelmed with all of the trolling and the mad theories and the crazy things that have been said. And she was simply backstage, you know, struggling with something that was really shocking and upsetting for her and her family.
When you initially spoke about some of the things that were coming out with the photo and, you know, other things, she's saying, oh, I just wanted to change it a little bit. You were even critical of how they were handling it in the beginning. Do you think that this video message has been effective in sort of putting everything to the side, all of the
I would like to have seen that happen a lot earlier, actually. And yes, they did make a complete mess of it. But I'm actually really told that some of it was because William really feels he is going to say, my family do not have to say anything about their private lives. So it's almost as if he's telling, in fact, that the communications apparatus, I don't want to do this. So there was argument inside that this should happen, but it didn't happen.
And yet,
in fact, it created a vacuum in which all these terrible rumors poured.
And yet, as you know, the institution is bigger than even Prince William. The royal family is an incredibly powerful, tax-funded institution. Billions of taxpayer dollars support it. Rather than trying to shame people for wondering where she was and all these botched social media moments, why didn't they use it as a teachable moment about cancer, about empathy from the jump?
Well, I think it's easy for us to say that, but when you are a young family struggling with these things, you know, I mean, they've had to deal with an enormous amount, because what people haven't really thought about is that the news that Charles, the king, has cancer, which came right sort of just as her own operation happened, that brings them much closer to the throne. I mean, whatever the prognosis is for Charles, he's 75 and he has cancer. That brings William and Kate far closer to being king and queen. That, I'm told, has plunged them into tremendous anxiety. So they're dealing with these two things. They may be king and queen much quicker than they thought, maybe even in the next couple of years, if things go wrong.
Right.
And she has this shocking diagnosis, which she never, ever thought she would have, plus 3 young children who she has to tell and handle. And at the schoolyard, people are obviously saying, what's wrong with your mummy? All of these things. I think that there was genuine chaos behind the scenes as they've been trying to juggle it all.
Yeah, she's 42 years old. That's very young.
Yeah.
She's a mother of 3. She's got to deal with the kids. I'm not going to judge her media strategy,
Exactly.
right? But at the same time, people were wondering where she was, what was going on. They had questions. Do you think the people who raised those questions owe apologies this morning?
Yes, I think that the apologies that are owed are some of these really salacious, horrible trollings that went on.
There were a lot of mean things that were said and a lot of jokes. And I think that's the point too, Tina, which is that there are people who can be cynical about the royal family and what it represents. But as you point out, it's a young mother with 3 children, a husband. And we don't know what it's like to go through a journey when you're faced with something that you never thought you would possibly face.
Exactly right. I think that the smart thing, honestly, to have done would have been to have had a wave from the window, a snap with her and her children early on to say she's getting better, and that would have stopped that. But they didn't do it. And as I say, we can't really judge because what they're dealing with is so incredible that they got that wrong, you know? Yeah. And I think we have to really cut them some slack about it at this point.
Yeah, they are people at the end of the day. Tina Brown, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.